You are watching Webfit News. You are watching Webfit News. You are watching Webfit News. You are watching Webfit News.
All right. So, hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Ravi, and I'm from Webfit News. First of all, I want to thank you for your time and the ease. You understood what we wanted to do, and we wanted to speak, and you agreed for your time. So, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So, what was going on in your mind, when you saw that email? That who these guys are, and why are they trying to, reach to me and speak to me? What do you thought?
Sure. Well, what I tend to do when I get a request like that is to have a little bit of a look at what you do.
Right.
And when I did that, I could see that you've been really active in terms of connecting with people in the community to have conversations about what's happening out there, what the issues are for people, what are the different ideas that people have for how we can make things better and change things where they needed to change. And I thought that's a really great initiative, and I'd be happy to talk.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. Now, I want to begin with very lighter note. Michael, labor, Roskill. If 3 words, gets into your head, what comes out?
Oh, okay. Well, that's been my life for quite a long time now. I was first elected to a role in this community back in 2010 onto the local board. So that's been about the last 15 years or so of life, and then later as an MP, and now working in the community of trying to apply my values as someone who loves this place and has Labor Party values to trying to make this a better place for people to live. So those are all things, both Roskill and Labor are things that are really important to me. And, I hope that by me coming into that mix, I can try and make a positive difference for people at the individual level and for the community as a whole.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I was just trying to break the ice, and you passed the test. Thank you so much for that. I was doing a kind of a homework. Obviously, it's good to do your homework before you speak to someone. So I was just trying to understand, what do Mount Roskill residents remember most about your time in office?
Well, you'd have to ask them that question, but what I would hope they might remember is that I tried to be a member of Parliament who was really accessible. So, before me, I worked for many years for Phil Goff. And so like him, I just tried to spend as much time as I could at the street level, meeting with people on the local street corner with my van, holding mobile clinics, being present at events, just walking and biking around the place. And I was taking the bus. I always found when you did that and you were accessible, people would have a word to you and they'd say, hey, did you know that the footpath is cracked on my street, and is that something you might be able to help out with? So I tended to find that just by being present, you could be a better representative. You knew the place more and people could talk to you. So I hope that people felt that way. And then secondly, I hope that people felt that as well as just being there, I was able to actually go in to back for people and to fight for them and to get some wins on behalf of the community. And that's something I feel strongly about, that the purpose of politics is not just to turn up and take a selfie. It's to find out what the issues are and then to change stuff that needs to be changed, whether it's a little local issue like getting a new bus stop. That's what I did on a few occasions. Some local people would say, hey, we want a nice bus shelter. Or whether it's bigger issues that need to change to make life better for people. I prided myself on going in and fighting for people. And you don't always win, but if you don't try, you never know.
Thank you so much for that. And I still see that a lot of powerhouse is still remaining, and you're just willing to do and help people. which is really great to see that that energy still there, and you just want to come out and help people. Appreciate that. Yep. Now, how are you engaging with the community now that you are out of the parliament? And the way you said, you are talking, you're trying to, stand in one corner and to understand. Now, is there any other approach you have in your mind which you are yet to implement in terms of connecting with the community?
Well, one of the things that I've done over the last couple of years since finishing in Parliament has been to set up a local community organisation called the Mount Roskill Community Association. And it's about trying to be an advocacy body for this community to make sure that the issues and concerns of Mount Roskill get heard by decision makers and to provide people in this community with support where they need it. And so when we started setting up that organisation, we went out and talked to a lot of the very active groups in Mount Roskill and said, well, what do you think are the biggest issues that people face in our community? And the number one thing that came out on the top every time we talked to people was housing.
Okay.
And so through the Mount Roskill Community Association, we've put a lot of energy into trying to support people with their housing needs. And so one of the things we've done there has been to set up mobile housing clinics in different parts of Mount Roskill, so that people can come and talk to us at a local church or community hall or the Wesley Community Centre, raise their housing issues with us and get support and advocacy to assist them. And sometimes we've had people who have been living in cold, damp, unhealthy homes and need some help in raising those concerns. Sometimes we've had people who have had people with very high levels of disability and need a different kind of housing to be able to live a healthy life with their family, and we've been able to go and try and provide support for those people. So that's one of the things, amongst others, that I've been focused on, is how do we provide that support in Mount Roskill, because if you don't have a decent, safe, healthy place to live, life can be pretty tough.
No, definitely. And with that, one question arises, since you're talking about the current housing market, you already know, right? So you think the Labour is somewhere responsible for this, or you think if your party, Labour Party, would have been in the power, the situation would have been different?
Oh, I think in Mount Roskill it's very clear because what Labour was doing in this community was getting stuck in and building homes, hundreds and hundreds of new homes built in Mount Roskill. Now, where we're sitting today, we're pretty close to the Mount Roskill South community, which is an example of one of the large-scale redevelopments that was funded and led under Labour. We built hundreds of new homes, state homes, affordable homes, market homes. We invested in new stormwater, new parks to build a great new community for people. We were starting to do that in other places like Waikowhai and Wesley. And many of the old homes had been cleared. We were going to move forward with the next stage. And as soon as this national government came in, they stopped that. And 2 years later, and you can tell I feel strongly about this, it's my own neighbourhood in Waikowhai. Half of our community is just empty sections because this government has neglected Mount Roskill and walked away from investing in the housing that we need. So, but at the time Labour finished, there was still more work to do, but we were underway. We were making progress here in Mount Roskill on that housing issue. Now, unfortunately, under National, it's stopped. And it's one of the other reasons we need to change next year.
Exactly. Really, you have put in thought in that. Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see how things goes. Yep. Thank you so much. Now, what achievement makes you proudest, and what do you wish you had done differently?
Yeah, well, perhaps in terms of the things that make me proudest, I can think of two things, one sort of smaller thing and one larger thing. The smaller thing I think of is a man who came to my electorate office, I think in late 2022, who was at that time living on the street. He had lost his housing. He had a range of complex problems in his life, and he'd gone to government agencies. He'd tried to get help, and nothing had worked. And he came to us as a last resort, and we were able to work alongside him, advocate for him, and get him into a really basic but safe, decent state house here in Mount Roskill. And I see this guy around sometimes. He's happy. He started a small local business in his community.
Nice.
His life has improved because we were able to support him and help him out with this particular problem in his life. And that's not a big issue that affects thousands of people. It was one person's life,
Right.
but we were able to make a difference, and that makes me feel proud. The second thing that I'll say, which is one of those bigger things, is that I continue to be really, really proud of what we did as a government to save the lives of people in this community around Mount Roskill during COVID. And, you know, as the years have gone by, sometimes our memories dim a little bit, but we face the risk of thousands of people, particularly our treasured older people and people with vulnerabilities, becoming very sick and dying if we didn't take action. And through the leadership of our government, we were able to lead the world in terms of limiting the number of people who were made very sick or who lost their lives in that period. There are people who are here today who wouldn't be here if it wasn't for what we did. And it was really hard. We had to make difficult choices, and sometimes we got criticised for that. That's what it's like being in leadership. But we made those calls, and that is something that I do feel proud of. And then you ask, well, what might we have done different? What I have done differently, or what are my reflections on that period? I think one of the things that when I look back on that I would probably do differently, you'll be aware that for a period of that time I was the Minister of Transport, and we made great progress with a lot of projects. But by the time we finished in government, some of those bigger transformational projects hadn't been finished, and unfortunately they were then killed off by the incoming national government. Projects like light rail in Auckland, which would really open up the city and give hundreds of thousands of people access to great public transport like you get in the other great international cities. And one of the things I would do differently with that is I would start out by beginning to build that in shorter, smaller, cheaper stages, so that we made some progress more quickly and then moved on to the next part. And I think by taking that approach in the future, and I hope we get the chance as the Labour government to do that in the future, we'd potentially move forward with these projects in a way that would stop starting under different governments, which is a big problem.
Right. Thank you so much for all these different sections of the question. I want to go back because for me, even a small thing matters. You said that person walks into you and you helped him out. Now, what can we do, Michael, that even though Michael is not there, but there's a system, the person walks to the system, no matter which government comes and goes, and he gets the help. You said that he did try all of the stuff, right? But it didn't work out. So what is the one thing which you have in your mind or can be done that we don't need a person, we need a system which can help?
It's a really good question, and it's one I've thought about quite a lot. And what I tend to find is that in many of the systems that we have, they work pretty well for 90% of people. You maybe think about people who need support through work and income, children and young people in our schooling and education system, a sick person going into the health system. Often those systems are staffed by professional people who care. They have systems and processes that have been worked out in a logical way, and most of the time it works okay. But you then have, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10% of situations where it doesn't, where maybe the person you're dealing with has a whole lot of baggage. Maybe they've got a mental health problem. Maybe they have a problem expressing themselves and they then get frustrated, and that creates a barrier in terms of understanding what needs to be done. Maybe the person isn't very literate. So when it comes to providing information or filling out forms, they're embarrassed and they don't do it. And so you've got to have a system that has the rules and systems and processes, and then has some human agency and some judgment, so that when you're dealing with those people and those kind of situations, you're able to adjust. You're able to treat that person as an individual, and provide them with the support that they need to be able to do well. And sometimes our systems can be a bit too bureaucratic, and they don't quite have that human touch. Immigration system is another great example of that. So that's sort of how I think about it. You need solid systems that most people can access, and then you need a little bit of flexibility to make sure it works well for everyone.
Right.
Because if we leave people behind, it harms all of us ultimately.
Exactly. And you did mention, you did advocating for that person, and
Yes.
that's how things was able to work. So that's what, because this country is so beautiful,
Yeah.
and there are things which are always, good for goodness, but there are things which you yourself talking about that it requires advocating. And if we get rid of that, if we make it straight that, okay, needy is there and there is a system, he gets the things done. But yeah, I'm sure, things will get sorted and the life will change coming forward.
Well, we've all got an interest in it.
Exactly.
We're all connected. And so, you take an issue that's been in the news the last couple of days, homelessness in our city.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't find a way of supporting those people who are living on the streets and getting them into safe housing and working with them on their other issues, there's a broader social cost.
Right.
And that's upsetting some people at the moment. But you've actually got to get in behind the issue at the start of it. You can't just say, well, get rid of these homeless people, get them off the streets, which is what the current government's talking about. You've actually got to find the core problem and then make sure that you're fixing that at the base. Same with crime. We know that if people have good jobs, if young people have hope, we have decent housing, most of your crime problems will not be there.
Right.
So let's actually go back to those source problems and give people hope and opportunity.
Exactly. So it has to be treated at the root level.
Absolutely.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I've divided my question, based on different categories. So the first category is flood recovery and climate, control. So did the 2023 flood response under your leadership meet community expectation?
It was an unprecedented event, really. And, I remember in this community, not only about 200 metres away from where we are today, we had entire streets and homes where the water was this high on the wall.
Right.
The cars were floating down the street. Whole neighbourhoods were basically devastated. People couldn't live there. They had to be moved out. And so it was an event, and that was in suburbs all over Mount Roskill and Auckland. And then there was actually two events. We had those floods over anniversary weekend, and then Cyclone Gabrielle was 2 weeks ago. So it was this double blow, which we'd never sort of experienced before.
Exactly.
So I think when you look at the response, there are definitely things that when you look back, you can say you've got to learn lessons and try and do things better. But in terms of the government's response, we made very clear from the beginning that we would provide every bit of support that we could. That we would come in and back up the council, who sort of have the immediate job of working with local communities, and that we would then provide funding to support the recovery and how you build long-term resilience. So I was one of the ministers who helped to design the big package that in the end has enabled council to work with people in those flood-prone areas who, weren't living in a safe place, for their properties to be able to purchase, to enable those people to move on.
Right.
So we came in with a lot of support afterwards. But look, any event like that, you've got to look back and you've got to then assess, well, if it's going to happen again, what are the things that we could improve? And I think we've always got to be open to that.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much for that answer. Now, what did you personally do to help 49 families still facing Category 3, buyouts?
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing that I did, which was I was part of the government and one of the ministers involved who set up that scheme. And so the way that worked is that government contributed about $500 million to partner with councils in order to be able to create a buyout scheme so that those Category 3 people who, as I say, were not living in safe places and were worried they would be flooded again, had an option to be able to move on with their lives. But then also what then happens under that program is that after council purchases those homes, the land then gets used to manage water better. So that the next time there's a big flood, we have catch pits, we have water retention areas, we have soakage areas, and other houses don't get so badly affected. So I feel pretty good about how that scheme was developed. Unfortunately, the current government hasn't continued on with it, even though we know we have more need. But then the other thing that was important was that we provided as much direct support at the local level to people working their way through that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as MP, one of the things, and after being an MP, I've tried to do as much as possible is just to be able to meet with those people, to help them advocate if they're having problems dealing with council and the buyout process, and to try and speed up the process. So I remember working in particular with a group of residents in the Balmoral area who felt that the process was taking a really long time and it was very stressful for them. And so something I did was to try and come in behind them and put some positive pressure on council to be more responsive to the needs of those residents. Currently, I'm working with a group of residents in the Upper Foe area, sort of around White Swan, where they continue to have serious flooding, to try and advocate for council to make the investments that are going to make that area a safe and resilient place to live in. The council currently has not made those commitments.
Okay.
So I'm working with those residents to be able to raise their concern up and say to council, you've got a duty and a responsibility to manage this issue now that you know about it.
Yeah, right. No, very well said, and I'm sure everybody will agree that the flood in the Gabriel, that was unfortunate, which is obviously nobody's control, and I pray that Auckland has to never face that kind of situation ever again. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I think we will, and I think we have to be honest about this. This is we're living in an era of climate change, and we will get more of these types of events in the future. No one can say exactly when they will be.
Right.
So we must put the steps in place to be ready for them, so that people will be safe. And we have to remember over those two events in 2023, about 10 people lost their lives,
yes,
as well as many people having huge financial losses and huge strain on their mental health. So we have to do the work now to be ready. And we also need to be doing the work to be mitigating climate change as well. We can't forget about that side of it. We don't want this problem to keep getting worse, and we've got to play our part there too.
Right. Let's see how we are planning to do. But yeah, there's something you rightly said, that these kind of issues keep occurring, and we have to be prepared for the future. Yep. Thank you so much. So now we will be moving to transport and infrastructure. So why choose the hybrid tunnel, light rail plan instead of a surface line down Dominion Road?
Yeah. So the way we went about that project was to assemble a team of people, a governance team of people, to really thoroughly look at what the best option was going to be. Most people in Auckland know that we need to significantly improve our public transport and have a quality linked up rapid transit system, so that you can get on a bus or a train in South Auckland, East Auckland, Mount Roskill, Central City, wherever, and make joined up journeys. That's the only way we will fix congestion in the city. And so having a form of light rail along that central area from the city centre through Mount Albert, Mount Roskill, moving into South Auckland and towards the airport and all of the employment area there is one of the big missing links. And so when we set up the light rail organisation in 2020, we said to the independent group that we set up, we want you to go and do the technical work and tell us what you think is the best option. And they looked at a surface level option, a partially tunnelled option, and a fully tunnelled option. And it was led by a guy called Lee Orton, who was the former chief executive of Manukau City Council, 40 years of civil engineering and local governance experience. So really top quality people. And they came to the view and advised us that they thought that there were more benefits in a tunnelled option. Briefly, what those are, you can, it's a much more efficient way of moving more people, because you are not interacting with the roading system, which you are if you're at surface level. It's a quicker service, and you have more capacity for the next 30, 40, 50 years if you have an underground system. Secondly, what you can do with that, you're not restricted to having to run on this road or that road. You can site your locations where there's going to be the greatest demand. So, for example, with that light rail route, one of the things we were planning on doing was siting a station in the Wesley area where there was going to be huge investment in new housing. So you have that additional flexibility if you tunnel as well. Costs a little bit more money, but you get bigger benefits. And it had a very positive cost-benefit ratio because of that. Having said that, all of the options were good options. A surface-level light rail option is also a good option, but it just works a little bit differently and you get a different mix of costs and benefits.
Yeah. So what I understand that even though if Michael would have not been there, anybody will take opinions, and based on the opinions, you choose what is the best works for. So it is not Michael's personal choice. It was based on the expert opinion.
Yeah, that's right. You have to have, on a big project like this, you have to really do the work through a business case process to understand the costs and then the benefits. And then there are always different options. And you have to have quality information on you, and then you have to apply some judgment to that. And as I say, our judgment was that we called it the hybrid model, which means it would be tunnelled from the city centre, and then at Mount Roskill, it would emerge, and it would go at surface level along State Highway 20. And we felt that was a way of maximising the benefits that we got from it. And as I say, that would provide capacity for the next 50 years or so. And what it would also do, it would enable us to create a corridor where you significantly incentivise new housing and other kinds of investment, because it becomes a very desirable place for people to live if they know that they're near a light rail station and it's only going to be 10 minutes into the city or 15 minutes to the airport. So it gave huge benefits if we were able to get on with it. Unfortunately, the 2023 election came along and that project was cancelled by the incoming national government. But the issue won't go away. Aucklanders know that we need a linked-up public transport system. And I'm sure that at some point in the future, and I hope it's fairly soon, we can come back to looking at those sorts of investments.
Right. No, very well said, and it makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that. Now, before I get into the topic, I want to talk about the current affair which took place yesterday. There's Minister coming from Piyush Goyal coming from India, and I think you must have already heard that Prime Minister also Lakshman went to meet him. And so, what do you have to talk about the deal which is yet to happen between India and New Zealand? So, what is your thought about it?
Well, I think there's a great opportunity for New Zealand to continue to make the relationship with India a more productive one for both parties. It's clear for me that over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of progress in this direction. But you've got to take it from a relationship point of view. And one of the things I'm cautious about is if you as a politician come out and say, we want a free trade agreement and we're going to get it within 2 years, you undercut the need to actually build relationships. You need to build relationships at the political level. You need to build relationships between officials. You need to really understand how you can land a deal and what the pressure points and difficulties are going to be. So that is my approach to these things. We want to get there. We want to continue to improve our trading relationship with India. It underperforms at the moment, given the huge Indian diaspora community we have in New Zealand. Given the warm relationships between the two countries, we can do more in this space. But there are real complexities. We know that as soon as you move towards a trade agreement, there are constituencies in both countries who might see that as challenging to their interests. And so you've got to carefully work through these things. So I really support that work happening. It needs to be led at the political level, but we also just need to step through it carefully. I'd much rather that we got a good quality agreement that took, 3 or 4 years than a poor agreement that was just sort of a political sales job in 1 or 2 years. We actually want it to be mutually beneficial for both countries. And I think we will get there.
Exactly.
And certainly it's something that the Labour Party supports and wants to lean into.
No, I'm glad to hear that you have similar thoughts. But I just want to get into, take a step back and talk to you about that. Was there any initiative taken by Labour government when you guys were in power, or you think that everything what we are seeing on the surface has been done by national government? What's the reality behind it?
No, I think that the way that these relationships develop is they tend to develop over quite a long period of time. So look, certainly I was in New Zealand on multiple occasions in meetings that involve visiting Indian ministers and dignitaries and officials, where the need to improve the trading relationship was highlighted. It was something that our Minister of Foreign Affairs under the previous government was interested in and involved in discussions around. But these things, they do take some time, and you have to build trust and trade negotiations are also very resource intensive. And I've been at the table at international trade negotiations. They involve, but before you get to a point where you have two ministers sitting in a room talking about it, there will have been months and months and months of officials working through what are the issues that are going to be discussed, what are the difficult areas that you might want to talk about, and what are the things that you might want to park. Are these things agreed between the two parties? What is the outcome we want from these talks? So these things are very much a slow burn. And one of the things I always feel about with these sorts of issues about New Zealand facing out into the world is that we shouldn't play partisan politics with them. Okay? We should face out as New Zealand Incorporated as much as interests and work together. And that's certainly the approach I think we should take.
Definitely. I understand that. And I totally, which makes a lot of sense. And what I'm reading from what he said is like, if this deal go through it and there is something, potential getting signed, then it's not only national government who should get the credit. There was work being done in the background by the Labour government as well. That's what I understand.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you'll find that with most trade agreements that we get to, the work usually goes back years and years with these things. And of course, actually below the level of the politicians who are fronting the meetings, New Zealand, one of the things, great benefits New Zealand has is we have a group of extremely capable, well-connected, strategic officials who for years and years work away at the officials level to develop New Zealand's position on these issues and build relationships. And those people are there as governments come and go. And I've had the privilege of working with some of those people at different times. So we're very well served in that environment. And that's important for New Zealand because we're a small country, the bottom of the South Pacific. And we live or die on our ability to be able to trade with the world and to have productive relationships with the world. So that's the other thing I would say. Yes, political leadership's important, but actually you need to have that work going on at the next level as well, and that happens across different governments.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much for your input on that. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Now, coming back to what we were talking about, I think we spoke about transport and infrastructure. I don't want to get into it so much. I'll leave it for next time. Now, since we already talked about housing and local planning, I want to talk about workplace relationship and local economy. So how did fair pay agreement affect small Dominion road businesses?
Yeah. Well, of course, we never had fair pay agreements implemented. By the time the government changed in 2023, they'd been legislated for and they were just starting to get underway. But broadly speaking, I think they would have been of great benefit to our small businesses. And I'll tell you why that is. Go into any small business at the moment and ask them how things are going. And in 80% of the cases, what you'll hear back from small businesses at the moment is that it's pretty bad, actually. Things are really tough. And you can see that in the empty shops and the businesses closing down and people just kind of hanging on. Now, why is that? It's because people have closed their wallets. We're in an economic situation at the moment in which most working New Zealanders, they've maybe lost some hours, maybe their partner's lost their job, they're worried about the future, and they're closing their wallets. They're not spending it getting a takeaway on Friday night, or they're put off buying the next appliance, this kind of thing. What you actually need for small businesses are for your customers to be confident and have the ability to be able to come and spend with you. What fair pay agreements would do would be to set a level playing field so that people, particularly those on low and middle incomes, were getting paid fairly, that good employers were not being undercut, you didn't have a race to the bottom. And when you pay workers fairly across your society, you give them the ability to support the local economy. And so if you go somewhere like Australia, they have something that's pretty similar to fair pay agreements. It hasn't killed small businesses there. They do just fine. In fact, their economy has performed more strongly than New Zealand's over the last few years. So I think fair pay agreements from that point of view would have actually been of real benefit. And for the small business person who wants to do the right thing by their staff, it would, if they were included in fair pay agreements, it would create that level playing field. So FPAs basically would say that across whether it's hospitality or retail or whatever the sector, here are the basic minimum standards for pay and annual leave and that kind of thing. No one's disadvantaged. Everyone has to be at that level.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're the small business person who wants to treat your staff well and give them a fair go, the problem you've got at the moment is that someone can open up next door to you
Mm-hmm.
and they can pay the lowest wages, the poorest conditions, and outcompete you.
Right.
And you'd stop that with fair pay agreements because everyone would be on the same playing field. So while there was a bit of talk, I'm a bit worried about this, it might affect small businesses, I think all of the international evidence
Mm-hmm.
is it would actually be a positive thing for small businesses.
Yeah. So when you started speaking about fair pay, I was speaking to someone else, from the party, and I got to hear that this is something which is really need to be taken care. Now I understand if you look at the issue of this fair pay, you see a lot of migrations are happening. People are moving from here to Australia, right? And what I see is that if a person is getting paid well, obviously they will come back and then they will try to spend money.
Yeah.
What you just said. So I think these two things are interrelated. So we should be really working on the origin of the issue rather than just giving some subsidy or doing some other alternative which actually not work for a longer period of time.
You're
right?
completely right about that. Yeah. We need to value people here in New Zealand
Mm-hmm.
and give them the incomes to be able to work here, build a life here, and keep their talents here in New Zealand. And you're quite right that at the moment we have huge sectors
Mm-hmm.
where people are going to Australia
Yeah.
because they have systems a bit more like fair pay. Over there it's called the modern award system, but it's the same idea. You have a level playing field, a basic minimum standard across whole sectors that has kept wages and conditions up much better than New Zealand. And so of course that's attractive for some people. And look, for me, this is just about the fact that the reason I'm in the Labour Party is because I believe that work gives people meaning and dignity in their lives. You should be able to feel proud of the work you do. It gives you a sense of contributing to society. So we should value work and value workers. And too often in the systems we have in New Zealand at the moment, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the people doing really important work in our society, I think, for example, about the care and support workers who look after our sick, who look after our elderly, grandparents when they need care in their home and this kind of thing. Those people just had their pay equity settlement killed off by this government. So you can understand why those people think, maybe I need to look somewhere else if I'm going to be valued. We need to value those people. And as I say, if we do that, it actually feeds through into the broader economy. I would rather we had working people being paid well and then spending that money in our local economies rather than giving big tax breaks to the very richest people in our society who chances are will spend it on overseas investments and trips and that kind of thing.
Exactly. So, see, Michael, I understand, these things are not, won't change overnight. Even though, for example, if Labour Party comes in power tomorrow, you do not have a magic wand that you just move it and things will be. So what do you think, what are these 2-3 things which you think that your government will take in priority the moment you guys are in power and you're working on it, that it takes time, right? So what are those 3 things which you think that your government will prioritize?
You have to provide clarity and you have to focus.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do everything at once.
Right.
And so we're very clear that an incoming Labour government will focus on housing, health and jobs.
Okay.
Those are the big 3 things that we hear from New Zealanders that they want to see change in. We continue to have this huge problem with people having access to decent, healthy, affordable housing. That needs to be a big focus. We have a health system which is in crisis. Doctors and nurses so frustrated that they're leaving the country. Full-day strike last week. People having to wait months and months for surgery that they need. Doctors' fees of nearly $100. And we've announced policies that start to address that stuff, like the 3 doctors' visits, and just today, free cervical screening for all women through the Medicard card as well. And then jobs. We've got to focus on the economy. This economy under National is going nowhere fast. Up to record unemployment of 5.3%, just announced yesterday. The government pulled back on a whole lot of infrastructure investment. It's provided no direction in this area. And what really worries me is we have 25% of our under 25s not in education, employment or training. And that's a recipe for social discord, for crime and all sorts of social problems. So really getting a focus from the government of getting people into work with a growing economy, into decent, well-paying jobs. That's always a mission of a Labour government, and it'll be one of the priorities if we're able to get re-elected next year as well.
Right. So with that, one more question is coming into my mind. That, see, when Labour government was there, I used to visit GP. If I do not have an appointment, I still have to wait for, say, 3 to 4 hours, and still that continues. So how that is different from then and now? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. Well, what we've seen over the last couple of years is that situation has definitely gotten worse. That we have people who sometimes don't just have to wait a few hours to see their GP, but literally have to book weeks ahead now.
Right.
We've seen a further flight of GPs out of the country to places where they feel like they're going to be treated better and be under less stress for what is an incredibly important job. And we've seen the costs continue to rise, as I say, to close to $100 in many of our major cities at the moment. And so what Labour has said through the announcement we made last week is that we are going to ask a relatively small number of New Zealanders who make a lot of money out of speculating on property to pay their fair share of tax like everyone else does, and every single dollar of that will go into improving our health system. It'll go into providing the free GP visits per year, but also it will go into providing greater support for our GPs so that they're able to build their practices, so that they're able to be remunerated on a fair and equitable basis from the government for the work that they do in our communities, and so that we're able to retain more of those people over time, and also making smart investments in things like telehealth and how we can responsibly use AI to help people with their health needs as well. So in addition to those doctors' visits, there's additional funding that will come from Labour into how we can continue to improve that system so that if you or your family member are sick, you're able to access a GP in your community and it's not going to break the bank.
Namaste everyone and welcome to Webfit News Live Radio. You are listening to your community news update brought to you by Webfit News. Here we share the latest stories from Auckland, important local updates, community events, and headlines that matters to all of us. Thank you for joining our live radio streaming. Stay connected, stay informed, and stay with Webfit News. I'm resuming the conversation with Michael Budd, Labour Party, Mount Roskill electorate.
Exactly. And remember, the other point about that is it improves the whole health system because if people are able to see their doctor locally, they're not clogging up the emergency wards at the hospital, which is one of the other big problems at the moment.
Right. No, I get that. Now, obviously, everybody's seeing the brain drain, the doctors, the nurses, they are migrating in big numbers. And I totally agree, the main difference is like earlier you used to get appointment within a week. Now you have to wait for 2 to 3 weeks. But do you think that the fair pay is going to solve this issue as well?
I don't think that fair pay agreements on its own will solve that issue. And remembering that fair pay agreements won't immediately apply everywhere. They'll apply to groups of workers who say we would like to have a fair pay agreement. So some of the groups who indicated they would like that were groups like cleaners, security guards, bus drivers, supermarket workers. So predominantly what you were finding is that it was groups of workers who have been on quite low pay and for whom life is very hard, who are particularly saying we think there's a benefit in a fair pay agreement for us. But certainly there might be other areas where we have problems retaining people, where a fair pay agreement system and other policies will help to keep them here in New Zealand. And I think it will probably be a mix of policies. So the other one I mentioned briefly before is pay equity. And that is a big issue in the health system, where we have many health workers in female-dominated professions where the pay is much lower than it should be and probably lower than it would be if it was a male-dominated profession. And that's built up over many, many years. And pay equity was about fixing that and making sure that those people get paid fairly. And this government just ripped that process away overnight, no consultation, took away people's existing legal rights to take claims under that system.
Namaste, everyone, and welcome to Webfit News. Welcome to everyone who has just joined. You are listening to Webfit News Live Radio. This is our community news stream where we share local updates, important stories, and what is happening around us. Stay with us and enjoy the live broadcast.
That's something that Labor has committed to bringing back as well. So I think a mix of policies, better investment back into our health system, bringing back pay equity, fair pay agreements, just listening to our teachers and nurses, not like this current government who seems to be picking a fight with them at the moment. I think that mix of policies, not overnight, but in time will help us to start dealing with some of these issues and keeping the people in New Zealand that we really need to have quality public services.
Right. With that, you reminded me recently there was a PSA strike, which of course Labour government strike, took part in it. So what Labour government will do that these kind of strikes can be avoided?
Well, we'll invest properly in our public services.
Mm-hmm.
And really what was happening on the day of that strike a few weeks ago, and it was an historic strike. It's been over about 46 years since we've had a strike of that size, and it showed the level of frustration. It was nurses, teachers, mental health nurses, firefighters, and other groups. And they weren't just saying, address our pay. That was a part of the issue because we do need to pay them appropriately and fairly if we want to keep these critical people in New Zealand. But the firefighters were saying things like, we don't have sufficient investment in our fire trucks, and we're worried that they keep breaking down, and it's going to risk people's lives. The nurses are saying, not just pay, but we're understaffed because this government has stopped hiring nurses in some places. And that's why patients who are very sick are having to wait hours and hours in EDs and places like this. So what you can absolutely be sure of under Labor, as compared to this national government, is that we'll be making those investments into our public services that start to deal with some of those issues. We are the party of public services for New Zealanders. This government has deliberately made a point of restricting the investment in those services and instead has chosen to give tax cuts to mega landlords and tobacco companies instead of making those investments. We choose to invest in nurses and teachers, our health system, and our fire and emergency system instead of those areas. That's a big difference.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now I want to just make the moment a little lighter. This section is called Know Your MP. So we want to know about, Michael, what brings you into the politics? What was the story behind it? And what motivated? Was this from the very beginning that you always wanted to be in this, or your profession? How did you get it? Just tell us a little story so people can get in, especially the new generation, if they can take some inspiration from you.
Sure. Since I was a kid, I had an interest in politics, and I liked the way in which it's the way that we can change things. We sometimes get grumpy and frustrated about things we don't like. Well, the political system is one of the ways that we can make changes, and I've always just been fascinated with that process. I moved into Mount Roskill with my wonderful wife. She's my partner then, Julie, in 2003. So we've been here over 20 years. And, when we came here, we decided we wanted to make this place our home. We wanted to raise a family here, and we still live in the same house in Waikowhai. And it's been an amazing community for us. And so for me, in this community, being in politics, and the reason I was drawn to it is because I love this place. It's given me and my family everything that we have. Our kids go to our local public schools. We spend our weekends at the local parks. We've made our friends here. When we need help, our wonderful neighbour, we'll do anything to help our family. And politics for me in Mount Roskill has been about how can I support other people in this community to have good lives. So for me, it's about how you, not just how you lead, but how you serve. I think that's the way that you want to look at politics. And it's how you can best make a difference for the people around you.
So can I say that Michael was meant for politics?
Well, in a democracy, it's always for the voters to decide that.
Yeah, right.
But it's something that I continue to have a huge passion for. And you mentioned some things that I really care about when we've been talking. That issue of ongoing climate change, how an unstable climate is going to affect this community. More people in Mount Roskill were affected by that flooding than any other community in Auckland. Well, we need political representatives who will fight for our communities and will make sure that the investment comes here to make sure that it's safe to live here. And the next time we have a big storm like that, we don't have people terrified for their lives and hundreds of homes flooded. So that kind of thing drives me on. The fact that we have so many people in this community who work really hard, whether it's in small business or in some of those jobs that we talked about, care and support workers, nurses, people in our supermarkets. And life is just, they work really hard. They're doing everything they should. And life's just still harder than it should be. They should be paid fairly. They should have affordable housing. And the fixes to these things in our political system are not super quick. But they're things that we can do better in. And that's what I'm really drawn to. And I suppose finally the thing I'd say is that, as people know, I lost the seat back in 2023. I had a really bad year that year, actually. And it's actually when you go to the bottom, when you lose, when things go wrong for you, that's when you really know who you are and what you want to do. And I certainly feel like this is an area that I still really care about and want to contribute to.
Right. Oh, very nice to hear that. So, if I want to know about Michael, so what was your schooling, where you did schooling, what was your education you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I grew up in Pakuranga, in East Auckland. My mum and dad still live in the same place that I grew up in. And had a great childhood out there, went to the local primary school, Wakaranga Primary School, on to Pakuranga College, and then Auckland University later on. And it was just kind of a normal suburban childhood. It's a big park out there called Lloyd Elsmore Park, and I played cricket there. I played badminton and other sports out there. Went on crazy biking adventures at the weekend with my mates, and still have friends from that time that I meet with and are really important to me as well. But as I say, all through that period, I felt interested in politics. My parents weren't involved in politics in any big way. Didn't talk about politics a whole lot, but I've certainly learned from my mum. My mum just cared about people being treated fairly. She was a plunket nurse, and I do remember her sometimes. I remember one time, I must have been 8 or 9, and there were a group of, I remember it was cleaners, and they were protesting for fairer pay. And I remember my mum beeping her horn in support of them, and me asking my mum, hey, what's that all about? And she was just able to just talk to me about it. It's the fact that, here are these people who do really important work and they deserve a fair go as well. So I wasn't raised in a political household, but I was raised in a household in a community in which I learned about how you treat people fairly and give them a fair go. And I think that's very much shaped my outlook in life.
Nice, very nice. So what Michael is reading nowadays?
What am I reading?
Yeah.
I'm reading the book I'm currently reading. Is a book that's about, it sounds very boring to most people, it's about political communication.
Nice.
And it's about how, in the era of Donald Trump, these things have changed, and people don't want super scripted, robotic-sounding lines from politicians and political leaders. They want to kind of hear the stories that are real. They want to hear that politicians know what it's like on the ground. They kind of don't mind so much that maybe most politicians are imperfect. They want to know that they're real. And so that's been a really interesting read. And then the other book I've recently read is called The New Silk Roads. It's a great book by a guy called Peter Frankopan, and it's about these...
While we are listening to the podcast with Michael Wood, there's a breaking news from our Prime Minister Christopher Luxon. National will lift KiwiSaver contributions to 12% total, giving working Kiwis stronger retirement, saving and young people more for their first home. When you work hard, save and plan for your future, National will help you to get ahead. Thank you. This was the breaking news shared by our Christopher Luxon, our Prime Minister. Let's continue to our conversation with Michael Wood on his career and his thinking and his second inning in the politics.
Amazing routes of trade and communication that connected Asia, India, East Asia, South India, Asia, and Europe for thousands of years, right up to the current day, in fact. And it's been a great book in terms of thinking about geopolitics in our world and what is a very unstable era.
Right.
And actually, sometimes by looking through our history, we can learn some real lessons about how we can function better as human beings and relate to each other.
Nice, very nice, very nice. So what are the things Michael doesn't come out of the house without them?
What don't I come out of the house with? Well, like most people, you're constantly on the go with your phone these days, right? That's how you keep in touch with your work and your family and other connections in life with you. I also always have on my phone and in my bag, I love cryptic crosswords. If I have, 10, 15 minutes over my lunch break or something, I love doing a little cryptic crossword.
Wow.
Really gets your brain. It was something my grandma used to do, and I could never work them out when I was a kid. And I love doing them now. They just keep your brain ticking over and keep your brain working in a different way. And I just enjoy that. It's just a little bit of downtime through the day. So those are probably a couple of things that I bring with me.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
What is the fun fact about Michael, which not many of you know, or your close friends will be knowing about?
Right. I love gardening. I think everyone needs to have something that just reconnects and grounds them, right? People have different things. And for me, it's my hands being in the dirt. And it's growing things. I just enjoy that process of seeing the cycle over the course of the year.
Right.
Sometimes it's the vegetable garden. I have a lot of roses out the front as well, and I love this time of year when you cut them all back over winter, you then feed them up, and now they're beginning to bloom into colour and life. And I find that that's a great reminder that you have good times in life and you have bad times in life. It's a cycle, and things. If you're down here, things do come up again. And gardening's a great reminder of that.
Okay. Thanks. Really nice to know about it. And I'm sure, we're going to, catch up you again and we'll talk about more interesting topic about it. So what is your message for the Webfit News viewers who are listening and, reading about you?
Sure. Hey, well, look, it's been great talking today. Really appreciate it. And I hope all of your viewers keep watching your shows and staying connected and learning a few new things. What I'd say to Webfit viewers is that we obviously head into an election year next year. It's going to be a really important one for our country. I want everyone to participate in that, everyone to be involved. People will come to different views. But if we want our democracy in New Zealand to be strong, if we want to get the very best for everyone in our country, then we can't have people who sit back and disengage. We're so lucky to be here in a democracy. So make sure that you and your family are enrolled to vote. Have a think about the issues that you really care about and will make a difference to your family. Come and talk to people in politics about what you want to see. And when the time comes, make sure that you do get out there and vote. And if you want to see things change, obviously, if you're not happy with how things are going at the moment, I'll be out there campaigning for your vote for Labour, and I'd love to talk.
No, definitely. And what Michael said, I want to rephrase about it. See, in the local election, the kind of turnout was really bad, I'll say, very low, which should not be the case. And like Michael said, you at least come out of the houses and vote for it. Register yourself, because that is something you will have your say. If you are not voting out, that means you are just not caring about it, which is not at all good, for democracy. So yes, please vote and have your views. Thank you so much, and great talking to you, Michael. It was really a very great conversation, and I'm very pleased to hear what your thoughts are about different topics. So yeah, looking forward to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
All right. So that was Michael Wood from Troskel area. Now we have another podcast to listen, which is really interesting on mental health. And mental health is one area which we feel that everybody should be focused and everybody should be looking at it the way it is, because in our community I think that is the least given importance to in any family. So be it even if it's my family, so I'm an Indian community or any community, I will say. So yeah, listen it out to our next podcast on mental health with our honorable Matt. Thank you everyone for joining Webfit News Live Radio. We appreciate your time and support. Stay connected with us. More community updates and important stories. Take care and have a great Sunday. Ending the streaming now. Have a great day. Bye bye.